All right, folks, are we live? We are now live. Thank you for your patience. It's always a challenge to make sure that we're all in the room at the same time. This is the House Democratic Caucus, and it is the 9th of May. Thanks for being here today. I have just a few announcements, and then we have a few bills to report on. Discrimination prevention training that we had last week. There was a survey sent out on May 2nd. Jill sent it, the speaker sent it to everyone. Just encouraging you to reply. If you have some feedback you want to share, please go ahead and reply to that and fill out the survey. Also, if you were unable to make it to the training, that email also includes a link to it, and you do need to be watching that if you were not in the room that day, or even if you were there for a portion of the time. So please do follow up and watch that discrimination prevention training. Okay, I'm going to floor. We're going to stick to our 10 o'clock start times this week, but we almost did it today, couldn't do it because of a bunch of other things happening, but we will be recessing as we did today to a point certain. We have said 3 o'clock today. It will be 3 o'clock, but it may be moving to 2 o'clock. So be prepared for that. 10 will be the start time, but the recess, pay close attention when we go to recess about when we're going to come back, because it probably will start to be 2 o'clock and not 3. More on our agendas. Paige's last day is on Friday. Jill was really adamant with all caucus leadership this morning, making sure we're all in the chamber on time on Friday so we can celebrate our Paige's last day. So please do that. We're still planning on, like I've said for weeks and weeks and weeks, getting done on the 12th. We'll see. Last thing, we're going to have long days, long nights, long whatevers. And so we're trying very hard to make sure that there is food available if there's breaks. So we're working with the cafeteria to make sure that we can get at least sandwiches, get them to stay open. So if anyone's having to struggle with timing or anything like that, please let us know, but do have snacks around. Come see leadership if you are running into any problems. And I'm going to say this last thing, I'm going to just say again, even if you have to be out of the building for a few minutes, we encourage you not to be, but if you have to be out of the building for a few minutes, please let us know so that we're aware, because things stop and start very rapidly in this last week. And you may hear the bells ringing very quickly at times. So just pay attention, try to be in the building at all times. That was it for my announcements. So please stick with us for a few more bills that we're going to do. I'm going to call up Representative Kornheiser and Representative Wood to speak to S56, which is still one of the bills on our calendar, childcare.
Okay, contrary to rumor, childcare is still alive. I know there's lots of rumors floating around out there, but childcare is still alive. We have reached agreement with the Senate on the construct of the program and the changes that are going to happen in the program. And so I'm going to speak to that. Emily's going to speak to stuff that's been going on in Ways and Means. You're going to see, it's going to appear a little strange because you're going to see as voted out of House Human Services. And then some of the things that I'm going to talk about now, because we didn't have possession of the bill, are actually amendments that will appear in the Ways and Means amendment. So, but they're all things that we have been working on together. So we pretty much, as we have talked about here with the caucus before, are on track for pretty much all of the House language. So if you have seen the House version on the House Human Services side, then that is where we started with language, as I had said previously, and that's pretty much where we've ended up. Been a few slight modifications, but what it does for providers and families, that's what I'm going to focus on right now. To let you know some of the implementation dates and some of the final numbers that have been agreed to. And if you want to see the most recent version of the bill, you would look on House Ways and Means Committee page for that. And right now appropriations is taking a look at the bill. So what we have agreed to is a 35% increase in the rate paid to the Child Care Financial Assistance Program participants effective January 1, 24. We have a zero copay, which is what we have right now for those at 150% of FPL. The Senate version was a zero copay at 185% of FPL. The middle ground of 175% of FPL. So starting April 1, 2024, families with a copay, families with a FPL federal poverty limit of 175 will not pay a copay. In expanding the people who are eligible. So right now we're at 350% of FPL on the top end. Effective April 1 of 24, that moves to 400%. And then effective 10/1 of 24, so in the following fiscal year, that moves to 575% of FPL. So the top of the chart will top out at 575% of FPL. Another thing that has been under discussion is whether the copay for families would be increased at all. The Senate version had a flat copayment, a family copayment, which we have maintained a family copayment. We are moving we had proposed in House Human Services to move from 26 to 20, from $25 to $27. We landed on 26, just splitting the difference there. The copay will not again go into effect until April 1. Another major thing that is important mostly for rural Vermont, and I do know for those people in the Northeast Kingdom, I was sorry to see the Lyndonville Child Care and Family Home was succumbed to fire yesterday, and that was very tragic, but everybody escaped, and but that's a big loss for that community. But that type of home provider in most rural parts of the state is something that is relied on heavily, and the data has shown that that is the sector of childcare providers that we are losing most rapidly. And so the House position was to right now, the rates that are paid to center-based programs are at a higher rate than the rate paid to family home providers. The House position was that we wanted to reduce that differential by 50%. The Senate did not want to do that. We landed on the House position. We are reducing it by 50%, but it will take effect July 1 of 2024. So those family home providers will get a bump of 35% starting in January. They will get excuse me, they will get another bump on July 1 of 2024. We also landed on $20 million of one-time funds going out for readiness grants in fiscal year 24, and then establishing a quality improvement program that has $10 million in it starting in FY 25. So those are the sort of main key elements of the childcare portions of the bill, and happy to take just a question or two because I have to kind of run back for conference committee. Yes, go ahead. Or I'm not supposed to call on people. You guys are right. All right.
Hi, Dennis LeBounty from Linden. You said that 175% of FPL and then 575 FPL. What does that equate in dollar amounts?
I didn't bring that sheet with me. I don't know if anybody has that. I can, okay. Emily will pull it up for us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. On the high end, I think it's around 160,000 for a family of 4, but that's the number I have in my head, but don't hold me to it. But we have all those numbers on sheets.
Yep, Rep. Kathleen James from Manchester. While Emily looks that up, could you just explain a little bit more about the readiness grants and the quality improvement program?
Sure. The readiness grants are intended because the the permanent base increases will not go into effect until later in the fiscal year. So they won't go into effect until January of 2024. So in order for programs to be able to retain their staff, ramp up for the increase in eligibility, make improvements to their program, there's $20 million in money going out on a one-time basis to providers. And then on the quality improvement, we laid out in the bill, I don't have them off the top of my head, but there are different elements for which you will be eligible for quality improvement grants. So it's about doing things like increasing capacity for infant and toddlers. We know that that's an issue. It's about offering more culturally diverse programming, things like that. There's like a list of 5 or 6 different items for which qualifies you for those enhanced payments. Okay, it doesn't show 175, but so a family of 4 at 150%, which is what it is right now, is 45,000. A family of 4 at 185. This chart doesn't show 175, but so a family of 80 at 185 is 55. So it's going to be right around a little bit more than 50,000. And then on the upper end of the scale, family of 4 would be 172,500 at the other end. One of the things I want to focus on is that this, remember, we're talking about increasing access, increasing equity, increasing the wages of the workforce, and increasing, continuing to increase quality. So those are basic tenets of what what these changes are intended to do. So while we always have a focus on low income individuals, we also in Vermont have not had, and this is my personal opinion, sufficient focus on middle income Vermonters who are struggling just as much by some of the things that we're doing. This program expansion to 575% of FPL gives 2 wage earners, people who are out in the working world, it gives them the ability to benefit from this program where they have had very limited ability to benefit from many of our programs. And schedule wise, I don't know, you might know more about schedule. Okay. Right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Representative Wood.
And I think an important detail about when we peg programs to the federal poverty level and multiples of the federal poverty level is that that gets updated each year. So we don't need to necessarily build an inflator in because the feds grow the official federal poverty level each year. So a multiple of that would grow as well. But I'm going to start back at the beginning. So your House Ways and Means Committee voted S56 out of our committee today at about 10:20 a.m. It was a great conversation and a great vote. The Committee on Appropriations is looking at the bill today and planning to act on it. They've had a lot of advanced prep and a lot of conversations. And as Representative Wood mentioned, the conference committee on the budget has already sort of come to agreement on the pieces related to the appropriations committee that are in the bill. And so it would be on notice tomorrow if the appropriations committee votes it out today, and then up for action the day after tomorrow, which is Thursday, right? Okay. Kind of hard to keep the days of the week straight around here sometimes. So the bill that we voted out, and I want to again repeat something that Teresa said before she left, that this bill really quite remarkably balances 3 aspects of what we need to do to improve the system. So we're using an existing system that's already part of the AHS budget, right? Childcare and Financial Assistance Program. It already has existing infrastructure for a means-tested program. It already has existing relationships with providers. It already has existing quality control grant programs. And what we are saying is we need to expand this program so that more families can be a part of it, right? That's what Teresa was talking about, but going up to 575 of the federal poverty level. And if we want to have more opportunities for folks to access care, right? More slots. I hate describing like children, playing and learning and growing as a slot, but that is generally how we refer to them in the system. If we want to have more opportunities for kids to access this care, a bigger supply, we need to make sure that we are increasing the amount of dollars that is going to these centers and home-based providers so that the folks, the women mostly, are making living wages so that they will stay in this field rather than becoming kindergarten teachers, rather than working in food service, rather than many, many other opportunities they might have. And folks go into this work because they care about kids, because they love kids, because they want to be part of helping grow young brains. But to stay in this field right now without the changes in this bill is really a difficult proposition for someone. So in order to both really celebrate the folks who are providing care in our communities, to adequately value the folks who are providing care in our communities, and to make sure those folks stay in those jobs so that we can have enough folks providing this care so that folks who need care can access it, we need to increase those wages. And we're doing that by increasing the payments that are going to providers. So we're making this more affordable for families, bringing more families into a means tested program. And we're increasing payments to providers so we can have higher quality care and more access to care. And I'm really, going into this biennium, I was nervous that we'd lose one of the legs of the stool in our negotiations, because we often do that, right? It's hard for us to focus on three things at once in one bill sometimes, right? But in this bill, we've managed to do that. We've managed to sort of carry those three legs of the stool all the way to this point. And I'm really proud of that. So the way we are funding this $100 million more in investment in this program a year, remember, existing program, but we need to put $100 million more into the system per year if we are going to have high quality, affordable, accessible care for many more Vermonters than we do now. We are funding that with the exact same financing mechanism that I described to you all last week at this time in this very room. And so that's by making progressive increases to corporate and personal income tax rates so that all of the Vermonters who pay their business taxes through the personal income tax, that's partnerships, LLCs, most businesses in Vermont, that's how they pay their taxes, is through the personal income tax, making sure they're paying their fair share because they've weighed in and told us they want to. We are expanding and making progressive increases to the corporate tax for that very same reason. Again, businesses paying their fair share for a system that will help all of us and help our economy. And then to make sure that we're buffering some of those increases, we're seeing a substantial increase in the earned income tax credit, up to 100% for families, 100% of the federal earned income tax credit that's refundable for families who do not have children, and a large increase in the earned income tax credit for families who do have children. And so we're actually going to bring the tax liability down a little bit for some of those families. And then also we're enabling some Vermont businesses, those who again pay for their corporate taxes, pay their business taxes through a pass-through entity on their personal income taxes. We're enabling them to use a federal workaround where they will get a discount on their federal tax liability because of something we're putting in state statute. So we're implementing this progressive increase in personal income and corporate taxes so that all Vermonters will pay their fair share. And we're buffering that on the high end and the low end with two different tax mechanisms that are available to us because of how federal tax law and state tax law interact. So that's the story. Really excited about our committee vote, really excited about what we're able to do for Vermonters here, for children, for families, for businesses, and really appreciate all of your support with this on the floor. I'm here for questions.
Representative Austin from Colchester. Just wondering what's happening with the child tax credit.
Yes, we are retaining the child tax credit is one of the best pieces, in my opinion, that this body has ever passed. It's really powerful tax policy. It's one of the ways we've learned some of the good lessons that the pandemic had to offer us about what it means when we put dollars in the hands of families. And we are both maintaining it in this bill, and we're actually expanding it slightly to make both the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit possible for families who don't have social security numbers to access. So it's a very slight expansion. And while I won't say that the administration is on board with the revenue increases in this bill, they are in very big support of the earned income tax credit increases and those changes to the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit.
Representative David Durfee of Shaftesbury, can you just confirm there's no change or no payroll tax associated with
There
this
is no payroll tax associated with the version of S56 that your House Ways and Means Committee just voted out.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And I want to follow up and just, can you fill us in on where we are in the timeline? So Ways and Means passed out a version that you've just
Ways and Means
described.
passed out our version of the bill with the package that Teresa and I have just described to you. It is in the House it's about to be in the House Appropriations Committee. And when they vote it out, it will then come to the floor for notice tomorrow and then be on the floor on Thursday.
Hi, Representative Esme Cole of Hartford. I'm curious how, or if you could speak to how the increase in direct payments to childcare centers will translate to increases in wages for workers.
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact number, but maybe like 87%, and please don't quote me on that, even though of costs for childcare generally is in wages. And so by increasing the amount of dollars going to those centers and to home care providers, we will, and we have a lot of legislative intent language to this effect, it will go to those workers. We also have a number of provisions in the bill around a slow and steady exploration of once the system is stabilized more than it is now from this increased funding that's going into the system, we are going to begin a process in collaboration with the early childhood field to begin a process of what it might look like to peg wages really specifically to certain positions. And so there's a lot of language around looking at that issue more deeply in the coming years as the system stabilizes in this bill. We also, our committee spent some time understanding the relationship between venture capital and this industry and what bringing new money into the system might do for that. There's been venture capital in early childhood centers on the West Coast for quite a number of years, and it's just recently happening here. We added a few provisions, and one of them is actually borrowed from our cannabis legislation, thanks to John Gannon, a previous member who had experience with the SEC. And we used a lot of language asking for disclosures of ownership structures of providers so that we can really even just understand if there is a challenge that we're trying to tackle. And so if you see that in the bill, that's why that is there.
Thanks. Angela Arsenault, representative from Williston. Are there safeguards in this bill that protect in any way against replicating or recreating the problem we're facing with funding, using public dollars to fund, independent schools? Are we safeguarding against that at all with childcare centers?
So there is a section of the bill about exploring the way that we do pre-K right now, because right now it's 10 hours a week. It's being delivered very differently from community to community. So there's language there about the move to understand what the move to a full day 4-year-old pre-K system would look like. And in that context, there is recommendations for contracting provisions, anti-discrimination contracting provisions, all of that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Representative Kornheiser. If you have questions, and you may, you know who to look for. Okay, up next, I'm going to call on Representative McCarthy, and we're going to talk about H305. I believe there's some people who are coming with him. Representative Nugent, Representative Andrews, maybe back up too.
Great. So yeah, couple of bills coming out of House Gov Ops. I'm just going to play a supporting role. I'm Mike McCarthy from St. Albans, Chair of House Government Operations and Military Affairs. I always forget when we're at caucus, we have to introduce ourselves. So I'm going to let Representative Nugent take the lead, and yeah.
Thank you. Representative Nugent from South Burlington. H305, you may remember, is the bill that made various changes to professional service regulation through the Office of Professional Regulation. And we sent it over to the Senate, and they've made a few tweaks to it. One of the things that they have changed is added a study committee to study a new profession and whether or not to add a licensure to OPR's oversight. And the other thing is expanding access to vaccinations at pharmacies for people who are ages 5 and up, instead of before it was just 18 and up. And then the final piece was updating the fee structure to keep pace with the times and the costs of operating the office, which is important for keeping strong regulations in place and keeping Vermonters safe and secure as they access these services. So that's my very brief update. Julia might want to add something if you'd like.
This was a surprise engagement for me. So hi, Julia Andrews, Westford, from the Ways and Means Committee. And I just want to remind everybody that the reason that we are increasing fees or looking at ways to increase fees is because there are structural deficits in departments like Office of Professional Regulation. And so when that happens, we rob from the general fund to fund parts of government that should be funded through fees. So this is a way to make sure that the Office of Professional Regulation, which looks at people when they have professional misconduct, has enough money to do that work. That is all.
Hi, Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury, representative. I'm wondering what the new profession that they're looking at perhaps regulating would be.
Yeah. The study. Yeah.
Oh,
He's on.
Yeah, Representative Nugent mentioned that the OPR is doing a study about some other.
It's a type of therapist.
Okay.
We're
Close enough, thank you.
Yeah, so the study is for a particular type of therapist. This is not the part that we've been super focused on. I don't think it's going to be the part you're going to hear about much on the floor. I can get you more information about that in just a second, but the committee hasn't even heard the testimony yet. We're going to do that before floor this afternoon. So that's part of why we're all like, yeah, that wasn't the part we were as focused on for caucus today. So I'll get you that answer in just a moment.
All right, I'm trying to be very efficient and holding some members up here when they have more than one bill. So government operations also has S39. And so Representative Nugent is reporting that one as well. So the two of them are here to do this one. S39 leg pay.
Again, Kate Nugent, representative from South Burlington. I am here to give an overview of S39, which, if you don't already know, is an act relating to compensation and benefits for members of the General Assembly. This bill came to the Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee on a bipartisan support from the Senate, and it addresses a longstanding issue of legislative pay being very low in Vermont. When considering running for a seat in the House or the Senate, in surveys, most people who are interested cite the low pay as the number one reason that they decide not to run. And it is also a factor when people discontinue their service before they've given everything that they have to give. So legislative pay in Vermont is between 12 and 13,000 a year. Just as another number to throw out there, median income in Vermont is about 60,000 a year. So cost of living is not anywhere near close to what it costs to serve. And to keep pace with Vermont's future and the growth that we want to see as we see new leaders come to the state or into the service, we need to invest in them. So this bill would not increase pay for folks serving right now, which is, I think, an important factor. It would increase pay gradually, starting with the 2025 biennium and beyond, bringing it up to about 24,000 a year for most members. In addition, our committee also reviewed adding the healthcare provisions and discovered that including healthcare in this bill right now could potentially complicate and add negative consequences for folks who receive subsidies, and that it would disqualify them for those subsidies and potentially make it more expensive for them to run and be served by healthcare. And so for now, we took that part out and we'll bring that back in 2025 after review. So finally, I actually think the most important part of this bill is the Legislative Service Working Group, which will convene in the off session and report back to the General Assembly in January of 2024 after looking at compensation, benefits, staffing, administrative support, and the length of the legislative session. So that is what the bill does in a nutshell. And there's a very helpful fiscal note associated with the bill that I encourage you to read for more details.
Thanks, Phil Pouch, Heinsberg. Is there still the piece in there where there's the 1 day a week pay, off session?
Yes.
Yeah, talk about that.
Oh, yeah. So good question. Thank you. The difference is that the difference we made in our deliberative process was that instead of it automatically being paid, you will have to go and claim it. So there's a little initiation you have to take.
All right. You know who to go to? See Representative Nugent.
Scott's question.
Oh, yep. We do want to give an answer to any questions that come up. So here's an answer.
Yeah, sorry about that. So Representative Campbell had asked about the type of therapist that was added to the mental health professions. They asked in the study that we had already approved that's coming back in December to consider how we would specifically license music and art therapists. So that's the piece, mental health professionals.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So if you have any questions for anyone on GovOps of the reports you just heard, please let one of them or all of them know. Representative Lalonde is, on the stage already to do a quick report update on 3 bills, S4, S33, S89, all that are coming up this afternoon.
We certainly hope, yes, we hope they are. Yes, we anticipate they are. We in the Judiciary Committee world, in the Senate and the House, we have 7 bills, I think, we're still trying to get across the finish line. We have one that's in a conference committee. The one we passed out this morning may be going to a conference committee. The Senate has 2 of our bills. We have 3 of their bills. When this happens at the end of the session, there are discussions among the chairs to see if we can find a path to get all the bills through. And you will be seeing the results of various discussions this afternoon. So we are, I'm pretty sure we're going to be requesting a suspension of rules to take S4, S33, and S89 off the notice calendar. And also hopefully we'll be putting them in all stages of passage. So I'll discuss each of these bills just very briefly in turn. So first of all, if we get this bill, when we're talking S4 really was the crux of our various discussions. If we get this bill out with the, well, what you're going to hear is actually there will be the committee report that Representative Dolan will be giving first. I have a strike all amendment, which changes a few sections that I will explain. And then Representative Chapin will has another late coming amendment, which you'll be seeing in your email very shortly. That makes an additional change. And when we get that all through, my understanding is the Senate is going to be able to concur. So S4, I'm going to start by just hitting on some provisions that we've always liked, I believe, in the House, at least your caucus in the Senate Judiciary. The bill establishes an offense for defacing a serial number on a firearm, which that's called a ghost gun. It also has an offense related to straw purchases. That's where an individual who's not a prohibited person, not somebody who is not allowed to have a firearm, purchases a firearm and turns it over to somebody who is not allowed to have a firearm. So we have both of those offenses are added. It also establishes a community violence prevention program. So that program is aimed at trying to address the underlying issues that may lead a community to increase in violence. We like the concept of it being preventative rather than punitive after the fact. So that's an important provision. And you'll probably hear about that in appropriations as well, because there's some chunk of money, which I think still remains to be seen exactly the amount will be going towards that. So those are the parts that we've, I believe, always liked. There was another part that we didn't much like, and I believe we fixed it. And that involves the Big 12 offenses, which I'll explain very briefly. So the Big 12 offenses are the worst crimes that we have: murder, kidnapping, sexual assault of a child, etc. And when a Big 12 offense is brought, those who are, I'm going to get all the ages wrong, those are 14 and over can be in criminal court. If it's 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, the case would in fact start in criminal court. Then for the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, if it's not a Big 12 offense, the case starts in juvenile court, but may be transferred to criminal court on a motion of prosecutor. This is really important because we want our juveniles, we want our youth, given their brain development, to not have a mistake, even if it's a terrible mistake, early in life to affect their whole life. And when you're in juvenile court, you're confidential. It's a confidential proceeding. The documents, the pleadings are confidential. And if you get through the whole process, you're not going to have a record. If you're in criminal court, you will have a record. And actually, if you start in criminal court and are transferred to juvenile court, you have what I've heard now referred to as a Google record. I mean, it will be out there and could really affect your life. So The Senate bill that came over added, I think it was 4 different additional crimes to the Big 12. And we objected to that. And we have taken those crimes out of the Big 12. With one exception, they also had, they added a Big 12 crime of attempt, so attempted murder, etc. They also added aggravated murder, aggravated sexual assault. You know, those made sense. But the attempt we initially did not. And when you see the bill reported out from Representative Dolan, there is an attempt in there. But we agreed, we voted on my amendment that puts that in for each of the crimes. So it's attempted murder, attempted sexual assault, etc. And we had heard from Defender General's office, state's attorneys, others, that that's the practice anyway. If it's an attempted murder, it's treated as a Big 12. So it really isn't changing from current practice. So we were okay with that. The other way we dealt with this, because again, I'll call them discussions that we had with our friends downstairs to make sure that all these bills could move. We have a compromise essentially for an expedited hearing for certain offenses. Currently, we've heard that there's a pretty significant delay if somebody is brought in juvenile court before there's even a hearing on whether to transfer the case to criminal court. And what we have in my amendment, actually it's in the underlying bill, not the underlying bill, the committee report that Representative Dolan will present. The concept is there, but my amendment actually changes the offenses that would be subject to an expedited hearing, so that there's still the criteria that have to be looked at for whether to transfer a juvenile to criminal court. But this is seen as an important step so that individuals can be tried in the right court expeditiously. So I think there's a couple other things that this bill allows. Actually, we received over from the Senate some pretty significant changes for property owners being liable if they knowingly allow someone to sell or traffic a regulated drug, or knowingly or recklessly, I should say, allowing that, knowingly and recklessly allowing their property to be used for human trafficking. And we pushed back on that. It's still in the bill with some changes. We got rid of recklessly, which was our biggest concern. And you'll hear a little bit more about that. That was controversial at one point, but I think that we've taken care of that. And I think we've taken care of the Big 12 issues. So why don't I take questions on that one first before I move on to S33? And I'll ask also Representative Dolan, did I miss any big things? Did I cover most of it? All right, good. So any questions on that one? Excellent. I'm standing between you and lunch, I can tell, which is good. So S33 is the joint, I'm sorry, I will say it right, miscellaneous judiciary procedures bill. So it's that boring bill that every committee comes out with, it seems, and nobody listens to. And that would be fine because it's not really controversial. But I will just give you a couple highlights. It has, I think, almost 40 sections, something like that. I'm just going to hit on a couple which are interesting. One section raises the jurisdiction limit for small claims court from $5,000 to $10,000. That shows you how exciting this bill is when I point that one out as one of the interesting ones. It also, based on a request from the Attorney General's office, we have a new statute of limitation for tort claims based on environmental contamination. Currently, a statute of limitation accrues. That means that the clock starts ticking at the time that somebody has polluted property. This would change it and say that as long as the pollution is in the property, that statute of limitations does not start to run. So it's a very important bill to allow the Attorney General's office to take action to clean up contaminated sites. Let's see, we also, we have a section that would prohibit law enforcement officer from engaging in a sexual act with a person whom the officer is investigating. seems like a good idea and pretty straightforward. And we also are allowing persons under 21 years of age to possess tobacco or tobacco paraphernalia that are used in indigenous cultural tobacco practices. And I thank Representative Sims for having brought that to our attention so that we could get that in the bill. Any questions on that one? I'm not going to go through all 40 sections, sorry. Yes, Chip.
Regarding the small claims, the increase in small claims. So the problem in small claims court is there is no enforcement method. So you can raise 5,000 to 10,000, but getting a judgment does not guarantee you get paid. So it seems to me that we should be looking at some sort of an enforcement method in small claims court so that people can actually realize the judgments that they get in their favor. And I'm not sure how to do that. I mean, we could look at forfeiture or all kinds of things, but that's the true problem in small claims, not particularly the amount, and actually raising the amount would eliminate it from going to a tort, becoming a tort in civil court for anything under $10,000. So those are my concerns with that piece of the bill.
I'll look forward to your bill next year that fixes all that. So this is fairly limited. It does not, just real quickly, it does not change the jurisdictional limit for credit card debt or medical debt. And yeah, so it really is, the idea is access to justice for those who might have a $7,000 claim. It wouldn't make sense given fees and costs to bring it in regular superior court. So this gives an opportunity for that. The last bill is H89, which we've spent a lot of time in committee, and that involves forensic facilities, the establishment of a forensic facility. And it is to fill a gap in treatment that we have in the state. We have inpatient hospital care, 24-hour care, at the very top, and then we have secure residential placement is kind of the next level down. We want something in between, and I'll explain why. This would be for individuals who are charged with a serious crime, a violent crime, who have been found to be incompetent to stand trial or not guilty by reason of insanity. Also, they need significant treatment, but not so much treatment that they should be in the inpatient hospital care. So there is a proposal for a 9-bed facility. If there are questions about that aspect of it, our reporter of the bill will likely yield to Alice Emmons because that's kind of her area. So we've worked a lot on trying to come up with the process and the criteria for who should be committed to a forensic facility. In the end, those with intellectual disabilities, the community, the stakeholders for intellectual disability rights really objected because I think as much process as anything, didn't feel that they were fully heard. And also, we need more time in our committee to really dig into this. So where we are now is to try to meet the goal for this forensic facility to be available in July of 2024. This bill would start some rulemaking processes for the Department of Aging and Independent Living and the Department of Mental Health. And it would also have a working group to work on language for criteria and the process for committing somebody with an intellectual disability. So it's really on the Dale side of what we're dealing with, not the Department of Mental Health side. And having legislation by the end of this year that will hopefully get that process going. So the bottom line is that we have individuals who are either held in the inpatient hospitalization, or they're being held by the Department of Corrections and not getting the treatment and services that they need. And this is to try to address that. If you have any questions, you can ask Will, or you can ask me right now. No questions. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
And if we get all these out today, I'll be able to relax and get ready for the corporate challenge on Thursday. So I appreciate your support.
Always good to have a sense of humor. Okay, that's it, folks.